Hello everyone, how are you? And welcome to Getting Results with Herbs. I know about 4 minutes early, I thought I would come on here and just say hello to everybody and see how everyone's doing. I see Chu Lan from Vietnam. That's awesome, welcome. And we've got Alice from Mid-Hudson Valley, New York. And came on a little live because this is our first time doing this year. There's a lot of technology going on in the background, so I just wanted to come and make sure everything was kind of flowing okay. So I have a couple of different places where I see comments, and I have to kind of go back and forth from Facebook to YouTube, because some of you are watching this on Facebook and some on YouTube. I want to make sure you can see me on Facebook. I'm hoping you can. If you can't, then that's not a good thing. That's why I'm on here a little early. All right, the video is live now. Let's see, watch live. I'm gonna put that on there. Oh, looks like that is working over there. So, just working out some tech stuff right here. Okay, that's cool. And so if you're, I might wanna put here, if you can't see the live, then please refresh your screen and hit watch now. All right, so maybe if somebody's can look out for me on Facebook, if someone's like, hey, commenting, like, what's going on? Where is it? I can't see things. Maybe suggest on there for me in the comments. Oh, good, like I'm starting to see comments from Facebook now. Great, so it's all working awesome. That's great. Thank you for, I just wanted to come on here, like I said, a couple minutes early and work this out so I can see everything now and everything look like it's going. But like I said, if you're, someone's like, hey, this isn't working for me or whatever, just like stick a comment on there to refresh or something like that. All right, this is cool. All right, so greetings from Asheville. We've got Carla from Trinidad or Tobago. We have April from Texas, and we have the Kennedy twins from LA. Thanks, KB. Having a hard time seeing, having a hard time hearing, so I'm going to see if I can plug in headphones. That's a good idea. Thank you for that little tip. I'm going to go over to the audio and make sure that that's looking good. I'm going to turn this up a little bit, turn up the audio. So I bet you that's a little better. Okay, so thanks for that little tip, and we'll keep an eye on that for you too. Maybe I'll bring my microphone a little closer as well. So hopefully that's helping too. Great. We've got Lori from East Tennessee. Meredith is much better. Thank you, Meredith. We're learning. So nice change to the audio. Thank you very much. All right, so Christine made it. Everyone's making it, coming on. This is so much fun. We look forward to this every year. And this is like to do our fall class, and last year was the first time that we went with this live format, doing a class over a few days, and Rosalee drove on out right here. She's with me here in this room. I call this the LearningHerbs studio when it's not being my office, but it's, we're in LearningHerbs studio, which is high above the town of Port Townsend, Washington. All right, it looks like we're just about at 1 o'clock, so I think I am going to get started here. And when Rosalee starts too, make sure that mic, Rosalee, is a little closer to you too, because I think that I also raised the levels too, so I think that'll help a lot. Okay, so we're gonna get started now. Thank you. Okay, feeling excited. So, welcome everybody to day one of Getting Results with Herbs. I'm John Gallagher from LearningHerbs. And if it's your first time with us, LearningHerbs, since 2005, we have been helping people make safe and reliable remedies with the common herbs that grow around them through our many courses, books, and even our board game. And our guide to these 3 days of herbal awesome goodness is Rosalee de la Forêt. Rosalee is an herbalist and best-selling author of the books Alchemy of Herbs and Wild Remedies. And Rosalee is also an international speaker and a registered herbalist with the American Herbalist Guild. So, without further ado, I'd like to welcome Rosalee. How are you today?
I'm doing so well, John. Thanks for the welcome, and hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. We've been prepping. I've been prepping for this for days here. John's been working for like the past month to make this all happen, and it's been fun, but the fun really begins when all of you are here. So
Exactly.
happy to have you all.
I'm always very grateful when the technology is working. So just a shout out to the deities that look after technology. So, all right. So, Rosalee, we have 3 days, and each day has a topic or a theme. And I was wondering if you could share what those were.
Absolutely. So day 1 today is what's your herbal type? And this is really we're going to root ourselves in the concept that when it comes to choosing herbs, who you are really matters. So we aren't choosing herbs for diseases, we're choosing herbs for you. So that's part 1, day 1, that's what we're going to cover today. Then tomorrow, we have avoiding common mistakes with herbs. And I'm really excited for this topic because truly my success is seeing your success. And over the years, I see people make similar mistakes that really holds them back from having a lot of herbal success. So we're going to talk about those mistakes as well as plant energetics. And we're going to have lots of fun because we're going to make teas together, taste them together, and discuss it together as well.
And while I keep this slide on, and speaking of little mistakes, I'm going to go on over and reposition your microphone a little. So
all right,
keep
so
this slide up, and maybe we could put that closer to you.
All right, people have to tell us if that's a little bit better.
Yeah. Thank you for working with us, everybody. I really appreciate you helping us work this out. It's just Rosalee and I in here. So as she's talking and telling us about day 3, we are going to see how this is going. So how about day 3? Oops, that's not the little. There we go.
Day 3. All right, you'll have to let me know if the sound is better. The mic is a lot closer now. Day 3 is your blueprint to herbal success. And this day, we're going to be looking at the chart a bit more closely. And I'm going to be explaining exactly how it works. And I'm also going to talk about 5 of my favorite plants. So super excited for that day as well. We'll be wrapping it up that day, and it'll be an experience from start to finish. So much to cover.
All right. So that's awesome, Rosalee. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. And now I have a couple of things that I would like to share because, just some housekeeping stuff just to make this a great learning experience for you over these next couple of days here. And what I suggest is make this me time. If you can find a little quiet space, get out a notebook, make your favorite cup of tea. That really helps. And I think that it is best to view this on a computer. Hey, a phone can work too. But when you're on a computer, you can see the comments, you can follow along, you can get that PDF up on your screen. If you're not able to print out the class notes, you might just find it a little better of an experience. Just a tip. If you need those class handouts, I saw a couple of people earlier saying, hey, where do I get the wheel? Where do I get that? At any time, you can pop up a new web browser. Just type in LearningHerbs.live. And on that page, right at, it says like a little number 2 next to it or something at the top, you'll see a little link where you can download the class notes. And that's, your guide what you need for these next couple of days. So LearningHerbs.live is always going to have everything you need there. It's also going to have the replays because a lot of people are like, hey, I can't watch this whole thing. Where's the replay? So I'll say it right now that if you want to watch a replay, you can watch it with the same link you're using now. But go to LearningHerbs.live and all the links there are right there for you. You can get text message reminders. You can get calendar reminders, all things like that. So today you're going to use the herbal type quiz, part of your handout. And if you don't have it printed, just have it up on your screen. Get out a piece of paper and a pen, and you can just look at it and do it that way. And I'll say this later as well, but tomorrow from the handouts, we're going to do a ginger tasting, a peppermint tasting experience. You can be ready with those teas if you want to partake. You don't have to, but it makes it a better experience. You get more out of it and gives you more of the idea what we're talking about, so you can actually taste, what pungent is, for example, when we talk about that. Rosalee talks about that later. And many of you are watching this, some on Facebook, some on YouTube. We like to give options. Some people like both. Some people don't like Facebook. So we have all these two different ways. And if you want to comment on YouTube, or you have to log in and to your Google account, your Gmail, or whatever, or your YouTube, and you can easily comment. On Facebook, I believe, if you're watching it there right now, you can just put your comment underneath for us to see those. Just want to make sure that. And speaking of those things, hold your questions. It would be really handy for us if you just hold it for our Q&A time, because so many comments go by that we just sometimes don't see them. So please, and also when we're doing asking questions, try your best to stay on topic too. We're more likely to answer the ones that are on topic. So awesome. I think that is all the basics, Rosalee, and I think that's all. I think that's all that we have to do to get started right here. So what do you think? Should we get started with the class?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a great intro, and let's jump right in.
Okay, I just want to let everyone know that I also have camera 2. So camera 2, camera 1, camera 2,
Very
camera
fancy.
1. Yes, isn't awesome? And but what I'm going to switch to is the camera that has the slides, which are not connected. They're not connected there now. We'll get that working. We'll just keep it on me for a second. So going back to it. There, yay!
I was trying to navigate the mic and make sure everyone can hear me better. And
Yes.
I'm a little bit unplugged, but I think we're good now.
Very cool. Hand it over to you. Thank you.
Okay. Well, hello and welcome from me. So today's presentation is about taking the guesswork out of choosing herbs so that you can get consistent and positive results with herbs. Because when you're using herbs for your health, you don't want to be wondering, is this going to work, or is this even safe? Can you imagine getting on a plane and hearing your pilot make the announcement that it's sunny and warm at your destination, and they're pretty sure they know how to fly? Obviously, that's a no-go. And when it comes to your health, you want to be certain something will help you and not harm you. You want to feel confident that the herbs you choose are going to work. If you've ever felt confused about which herb to take, you aren't alone. I've been teaching people how to get results with herbs for well over 10 years, and uncertainty about which herbs to choose, as well as concerns over safety, are very common. And I know all too well how that feels myself. So what's the deal with the confusion? Well, I'll tell you, it's not because we're all stupid, and it's not even because learning about herbs is all that difficult. The problem is how we commonly approach learning about herbs. Too often, we base our learning on memorizing lists. We want to know what herb is good for what problem. So we look it up in a reference and then try to memorize the suggestions that are found there. And when you use this list-based method, you have an overwhelming amount of options. If there are 20 choices for herbs that are good for digestion, how do you decide which one to use? And then if you do manage to pick one herb out of the many, or perhaps even a formula, then you have to figure out how you take it. Is it best as an alcohol extract or tincture, or is it better as a glycerite? Or maybe you should take it as a tea. But then you have to decide, should you infuse the herb in water or in hot water, or do you have to simmer it? Then, of course, there's the herbs themselves. Is it better to take the herb fresh, or is it better dried, or does it even matter? Then, of course, there's dosage. How much should you take? Is more always better? Well, list-based learning leads to confusion, it leads to overwhelm, and it's oftentimes just ineffective. So the sooner we get rid of memorizing lists, the better. I want you to consistently get amazing results when you're working with herbs, so that your experience is less like this and more like this. I've got this. So in this presentation, you will learn why knowing who you are is the best place to start when choosing herbs. In tomorrow's presentation, you'll see how to move beyond memorizing lists of herbal information to exploring herbs in a way that ensures you'll really get it, and then you'll never forget it. I'll also be specifically looking at 4 common mistakes that can keep you from getting the results you're looking for. And lastly, on day 3, I will show you exactly how to use the flavor wheel as your blueprint to getting amazing results with herbs. So let's begin. What's your herbal type? Our first main topic is you. Who are you? Well, I know one thing for certain. You're definitely unique. There's no one out there like you. When we look at a sea of humans, we can instantly see so many unique qualities amongst them, from age to gender identity to weight to skin color. And when we get to know people, we see a million other differences and similarities in preferences, from food loves and hates to sensitivities to external stimuli and on and on. So isn't it strange that despite our many differences, when we get sick, the focus is on the name of the disease and not on our individuality? In other words, if 10 people with eczema walked into a doctor's office, chances are those 10 people will walk out with the same prescription, no matter if those 10 people have different underlying causes or react to medications differently. That's because in Western medicine, you have eczema. However, in herbal medicine, you aren't reduced to eczema. Instead, who you are is carefully assessed so that the best plants can be chosen specifically for you. As a result, if 10 people with eczema went to see a traditional herbalist, they would most likely walk out with 10 different solutions. Those 10 different solutions would be based on who that person is. Oops, went a little bit too far. To get consistent results, it's important to know who you are rather than what disease you have. When you know the individual, then the remedy can be fine-tuned to really work for you. In herbalism, we always want to avoid a one-size-fits-all approach. Here's another way of looking at this. Sometimes I'll hear people say, I have blank problem or I have blank disease. What herb is good for that? Or they might say, like, I'm taking XYZ medication for my health issues. What herbs can I take instead? Well, if we stuck with the example of eczema, that might be, I'm using steroid cream for my eczema. What can I use instead? When people ask these questions, they're generally wanting natural solutions for their health problems. And these aren't bad questions. But to really address someone's health using herbs, we got to back up a bit. The thing is, Western medicine and herbalism aren't the same healing modalities. Sometimes people think that they are basically the same, except that they use different medications. So instead of using prescribed pharmaceutical drugs like Western medicine, herbalism uses natural or less processed substances like herbs. And sure, that's one difference, but for many people who use herbs, there's a whole other system of healing that underlies how they use the herbs. In other words, there's a different approach in how herbs are chosen. And as I mentioned before, you'll get the best results not when you choose herbs from a memorized list and not when you try to substitute herbs for drugs, but instead when you choose herbs using your herbal type as a guide. And we'll be diving into the heart of that in just a moment. Before we get back to live video, I wanted to check in about how you can get the most from this training. The first is that you can probably see by now that this is a highly visual presentation. I put a lot of thought into these slides. I'm a highly visual learner myself, and I like to see beautiful images bring the concepts to life. So I really recommend giving this part of the presentation your full attention. And if you need to go to a break, we do go to live video and we'll chat, so you can stretch a leg then, make some tea, maybe take a quick break from being so focused on the screen, but don't go too far, because that's when I'm answering questions. The second thing is that I want to invite you to settle into the pace of this training. This live presentation is a chance for us to hang out and steep a bit together. So please make that cup of tea, get cozy, and enjoy our time together. I am purposely switching from slide-based presentations where I'm sharing the principles of this training to the live video where we can chat and I can answer questions, because I found that the more we can really feel and embody these teachings, the better. If we just take in a bunch of facts really fast, then that information is unlikely to stick around. And lastly, I just want to say I am so grateful that you are all here. It truly wouldn't be any fun without you, so thanks for being here. And, if you feel inclined, please use the chat to participate when we have that chat going on, because hearing from you really keeps my energy up, and it's just a really fun way to engage. Okay, so that was just a bit of an intro and logistics, and with that we can go back to live video. I'd love to hear your impressions about the importance of choosing the herbs for you instead of simply choosing an herb for a disease.
Yes, so please type your comments and questions in there now before we get to the next part, and we can get started.
All right, and it sounds like John in the background is figuring out audio. Seems like that
has
gotten better.
About all that. I turned it way up before. I think what happened is some people are watching it earlier version of it when we did have a problem, and then they're putting it in the comment.
I see.
And so I think that's what's been basically going on.
I see.
I'm faint. There I go. Sorry, I'm getting it. We're getting it. This is just the beginning. Sorry, my mic was off. All right, sorry about that. All right, we're learning. This is the beginning. Thank you for being with us. Okay, so, Rosalee, we should say that question again as they come in.
What question was
The
that?
question that we wanted people to comment on.
Oh,
right now.
okay, that question. So I'm wondering about how that concept falls initially, about how choosing herbs for a person rather than choosing it for a disease really sits with you. So the example being, you are not eczema, and in the herbal world, if 10 people have a diagnosis of eczema, they don't all get the same prescription, because herbs are chosen for them as an individual. So I'm wondering how that falls with you. How does that feel to you? Do you recognize that that's often what Western medicine does and that's a little bit different in herbalism? Just wondering your thoughts about that before we go on.
Mm-hmm. So if you have any thoughts, just put them all right in there in the comment. And otherwise, Rosalee could probably move on with the presentation. Not seeing anything in there yet, but
I saw a comment that says
yes.
It sounds like functional medicine, which just kind of makes me chuckle a little bit, because herbalism has been around for thousands of years, and this is something that herbalism has been doing for thousands of years. And functional medicine is cool. There's some cool concepts there, but it's been around for a couple decades maybe. So not specific to functional medicine, but certainly more, I would say, specific to any kind of holistic healing modality out there that really wants to look at the person and not just the disease.
Mm-hmm. So let's see. I love Naomi shares, I love the idea of how individual herbalism can be made rather than focusing on a group mindset.
That's another question I have, is how many people, raise of hands, how many people have thought, what herb is good for eczema, or what herb is good for headaches, or what herb do I take for this? I have. I mean, that's how I got into herbs. What herb is good for that? And I think that a lot of us start out that way. And I think it's important to just recognize that that is often the beginner step. But what's cool is if people start with that step, they're interested in herbs and are thinking what herb is good for whatever. And then it's once you peel past that curtain of what herb is good for this, there's this whole other world to explore. And that's when herbs become really fun. And that's when herbs become a lot more effective. And that's what this presentation is going to be all about. How do we get past that, what herb is good for X?
Well, Heidi asks, I can see how each person is different and their treatment is different, but how do you know what works for you?
Perfect question. That's what we're going to get into. Absolutely.
Okay. So should we get into that?
Sure. Yeah, let's go.
Okay. Thanks for all those great comments, everybody, and we'll continue on. Let's see. I just have to, what's funny is the comments are going by so fast that I am losing track of the things that...
You need to turn off.
I can't turn off the
Yeah.
thing that I should. I'm like, where did that one go? Oh boy.
They should have another option for that.
I know, right? Okay.
I'll take this chance to kind of look at some of these
Okay, I think I figured out how to do it. Okay.
All right. Okay. So that was a great question that we had on the screen for a while. How do you choose the best herbs for you? Perfect question. Well, the first step is knowing who you are by knowing your energetics or your herbal type. And then the second, you need to know plant energetics. Today we're going to look at your personal energetics or your herbal type, and tomorrow we'll be experiencing plant energetics. So the question is, what do I mean by energetics? Well, both human and plant energetics are based on the 4 qualities of hot, cold, damp, and dry. And people tend to be either cold or hot, and then either damp or dry. So the pairings might be that someone tends to be hot and damp, or cold and dry, or hot, dry, etc. So let's take a look at what I mean by hot and cold. And certainly this is something we all have experience of, the experience of being hot or cold. But when we're talking about that, we aren't talking about what a thermometer says. Instead, we're talking about how you feel. Do you frequently find yourself wearing sweaters? Does huddling up to the radiator sound not so far-fetched for you? Or are you the one who's in a t-shirt and turning up the AC constantly? So that's what's meant by hot and cold. It's not what is on the thermometer, it's how you feel. And here's some more specifics. People with a warmer herbal type tend to feel warmer than others. They tend to have a loud voice. They tend to easily get flushed, or maybe their face has a red color to it, or their tongue might be bright red. They might have loud opinions to go along with that loud voice, and they often prefer cold weather. People with a colder herbal type tend to feel colder than others. They might have a quieter voice, they might have a pale face, or their lips or tongue might be pale. They might tend to have lower energy levels, and they might prefer warm weather. Okay, so this brings us to the quizzes, and I hope by now you've had a chance to download those materials that we sent out for this whole presentation. And one thing you're going to find in that handout are these quizzes. And if you've already filled it out, awesome. If you haven't, you'll have an opportunity to do that soon. So the first thing that we'll look at is on page 2, that first quiz that's at the top of the page. And this is the quiz for determining whether you tend to be more hot or more cool. And one thing I want to point out, because I always get this question, it's common that you'll have markings in both boxes. So just to show you what I mean, I'm going to pretend fill this out for someone. So here I've pretend filled it out, and you can see there's 4 on the left-hand column in the hot side and 2 in the right-hand column in the cold side. So in this situation, the person tends to have more heat than coldness. So again, it's common that you have both. You don't just have to have one or the other. So big picture here. If you're having trouble deciding if you are more hot or cold, really think about the major ways that this really shows up for you, big picture. If you occasionally feel hot, but your partner is your warming system every time you go to bed, then you're going to focus on that big picture of feeling mostly cold. It's also possible for you to not be extremely hot or extremely cold. So if you look at this graph, the green dot is signifying where someone might be on the scale. So if you're really hot or really cold, it's really easy to notice that because you have a lot of symptoms of hot and cold, and you can really point to that. But if you're more fairly neutral, then it can take a little bit more sussing out, and I'll talk more about that in a bit. Okay, so let's go back and discuss hot and cold a bit. And if you haven't already looked at the quiz, you can go ahead and do that now during the break. And then when we come back, we'll look at damp and dry. But for now, I want to hear what your thoughts are about hot and cold. And if you have experiences of feeling more hot or cold in your life, maybe you can think of others who tend to be like you've never thought of yourself in a certain way, but you have someone who's, a friend whose hands are always frigid or something like that. Just what are your experiences of hot and cold?
Yeah, as those are coming in, there's some coming up pretty neutral, and then there was one I was just about. What if you feel extremes of both?
Yeah, so anytime, it's actually when you don't fit into this like really perfect mold, that's actually, I think, a huge advantage, because ultimately what you want to do is pay attention to how you feel. So it's more important to have a sense of that, like I feel hot right now, or I feel cold right now, rather than to have some kind of label like I am, a hot to dry person, and just feel like rigid about that. Because the thing is, we have all of these qualities in ourselves all the time, right? Obviously we need to. We can't just always feel hot. We can't always feel cold. It's something that oscillates, and just, as nature oscillates, as we are a part of nature, so do we. So we'll talk about that in a little bit, of just how things change. Mm-hmm. The most important thing is really to pay attention to how you feel and to notice these things.
Mm-hmm. Had a good question there. Lots coming in. How about hot with cold feet?
Hot with cold feet. Yeah, so that would be something to notice, and just keep that in mind. When you're thinking about your overall constitution, your overall herbal type, you're really thinking big picture here. If the cold feet, if you have hot of everything, and then just like a little bit of, coldness here and there, you're really looking at big picture, so you'd probably be considered more warmer in that situation.
So high CS, is it literal hot, just literal hot and cold? What if someone has a short temper, for example, would that be considered hot?
It is interesting that like a short temper is kind of associated with being like hot-headed. And there is definitely, it's not just literal in what we feel, but we do see those tendencies. It's not always like, if someone is warm, that doesn't always mean that they're, that they're going to be like short-tempered or hot-headed or whatever. But it is interesting to see when those things overlap. And sometimes when you start to clue into those patterns, you'll really see that. And one thing I like to think about a lot is cartoons, because sometimes in cartoon imagery, they'll like make that really clear, and they'll kind of go to the extremes. So like I think of like the Queen of Hearts from Disneyland's Alice in Wonderland. And the Queen of Hearts, it's like she's hot-headed, she has a short temper, and when she gets mad, her face gets super red. So that's, it's just interesting to notice that, because if I had to guess the Queen of Hearts temperament, I would definitely say that she was a warmer herbal type for sure.
Can you change with aging, Kendra asks?
That's a good question. So technically, in herbal theory, your constitution does not really change. It's what you're born with. But obviously, how we feel that constitution changes as we go throughout our lives. So I'll talk about that in a little bit as well. But sometimes it's helpful to think about, how have I felt for most of my life? Have I tend to be colder or warmer for most of my life?
Yeah, a few other questions like that one here too. Can it change hot and cold depending on your time of life? Let's see. Can one have a cold body but a hot personality?
Yeah, that can absolutely happen. And it's so good to not rely entirely on labels, but to be able to pick those things out, like to just notice that is so important.
Okay, that sounds great. So do you have more to add here? Should we move on?
Yeah, we can go to the dry and damp next.
Dry and damp. So hopefully everyone is able to have your PDF up on your screen, or maybe you have your printout and you're checking out the little boxes to discover what your constitution might be like. And thanks, Iris. I like this. It's good questions, y'all. That's right. We've got lots of questions to answer today, so I really appreciate that. Okay, so I'm going to go over to Rosalee's next slide.
All right. Okay, so we've looked at hot and cold. Let's look at dry and damp. So this, again, is how do you feel? And oftentimes we're thinking about, like, how does your skin feel? Or how does your hair feel? Do you tend to feel moist or oily? Or do you have lots of dryness? Even if you're constantly slathering yourself in moisturizers, you're still dry. Well, people with a damper herbal type tend to sweat more easily. They might have a runny nose more often. Their arms and legs might feel heavy. They might have a thick coating on their tongue. Their skin and hair might be oily. They might prefer dry climates. And people with a drier herbal type might have rough and dry skin. They might have a lot of thirst or a dry throat, nose, or mouth. Their hair and skin might feel dry. They might not have any coating on their tongue. Their skin and scalp might be itchy due to the dryness. And they might prefer humid climates, or they might be bothered when the air is too dry. Remember, you are definitely unique. So we might say that someone tends to be cold and damp or hot and dry, but we always have to keep in mind that everything is on a scale. So you could be really hot, but just a bit damp. Or you could have lots of signs of dampness and be just a bit warm. You could be very cold and very dry, or just a bit cold and a bit dry. And of course, how you feel changes through the seasons. Sometimes you can see why you might prefer one season over the other. My husband, he is a very warm person, and he loves cold winter months. And then for me, summer can never last long enough. Then the climate that we live in can also affect how we feel. If you live in the desert versus a rainforest versus a place that's very, very cold. Even the time of day can play a role, as well as many people have already pointed out, different stages of life we can feel differently in. So my good friend and fellow herbalist, Jim McDonald, likes to say, herbalists have to learn to think in fuzzy lines, and that's so true. So basically what we're doing is we're learning classifications, we're learning what it means to be hot or cold, but we also always have to keep that fuzzy line concept in mind, because it's not just that we're one or the other. So in other words, you really need to pay attention to you and how you feel in a given moment. So we aren't rigidly seeking out a certain herb because someone on the internet said it was good for you. I'm suggesting you learn how to turn inward to figure out what's best for you based on your herbal type and these qualities of hot, cold, damp, and dry. And we also might take things into consideration like the seasons, the climate, the time of day, your age. And I know that can sound like a lot, but really it becomes easier and easier the more you practice. For example, when it is sweltering hot outside, what do you reach for? Are you dreaming about a bowl of rich, hearty soup that's really hot and spicy on a hot summer day? Or are you thinking about iced lemonade? It's really that simple when it comes down to it. Okay, so have you ever noticed that you reach for a certain herb more during a particular season? Or it doesn't even have to be an herb, it could just be a food like iced lemonade in the summertime. And I'd love to hear your questions regarding damp and dry or anything else in regards to these qualities of what we're talking about with the temperaments.
All right. Let's see if type those in right now, and we'll do a little discussion about this. This is awesome. That's great. Okay. And it takes sometimes a little bit for these to catch up with us. But there's a lot of folks who are commenting, Rosalee, as you see on the screen there. So here's a question. Sarah asked, what if your hair is oily and your skin is dry?
So that is not uncommon, and sometimes what can affect that is our own health and beauty regimen. So sometimes soap or shampoos, etc., can play a role in how that changes for us. But always, most importantly, is noticing that. Because again, it's not like we're all dry and it's not like we're all damp, but within ourselves, we really have to look at that. And just the more you know about yourself, like you know that my skin is dry, my hair is oily, or vice versa, the more you know that about yourself, the better. Because it is, what I'm doing is showing you the big picture and these kind of big concepts in a simplified way. And you got to make it personal to yourself by paying attention to exactly how you feel. So again, it's not really like trying to fit yourself into a box, because nobody fits into the box, right? You're all unique. what's important is to get the concepts and then relate them to how they feel for you. And I think as we're going through these presentations over the next couple of days, it'll be interesting to talk to your friends and family about this too, and just ask them, like, what's your experience of hot and cold? How do you feel? Generally, what is your experience of dry and damp? Because when we hear other people's experiences, that can help us see that there really is so many unique qualities out there, and how important it is to pay attention to ours.
Catherine asks, what is the significance of a coated tongue?
Well, that is both an easy and very complicated question. In this particular situation, what I'm just saying is that a coated tongue tends to go with people who feel more damp, and no coat on the tongue tends to go with people who are more dry. There is, of course, Chinese medicine, they use tongue diagnosis a lot. You could spend years studying tongue diagnosis, and there's entire books written on the subject. So that's why it's kind of like there's the big question of like there's so much to look at in terms of tongue diagnosis. But for today, in these purposes, it really is just another indication. So for example, if somebody is like, well, my hair feels oily, my skin is dry, but I tend to have a thick coating on my tongue. In that case, there's kind of two things leaning towards more dampness and one thing leading towards dryness. So that could be it's another indicator of what might be going on.
You mentioned too about Chinese medicine, and there was a question right there about what school of herbalism is this based on. I thought some folks might want to know about that.
That is a good question. Yeah, so my own personal schooling, I went to 8 years of intensive herbal school, and I studied traditional Chinese medicine, I studied Ayurveda, and also traditional Western herbalism. And I loved studying all of those different modalities, and just the way my brain works, I began to see that they were, in their complexity, there was these base underlying qualities that they all were seeing very similar things. Like they're all based on the same structure of looking at these 4 qualities. So what I'm offering to you today is this simplified view. I'm not saying like you need to go to 4 years of Chinese medicine school to understand your herbal type. I'm saying we're going to do this presentation and you're going to understand those basic qualities because I've simplified it by looking at those different modalities and kind of bringing it down to the essential.
And this is a question a lot of people might be wondering. Hannah asks, are hot and cold/dry and damp related to certain organs over or under functioning?
That would be like one of those 4-year study questions. Certainly there is something to that, especially in Chinese medicine, they look at that. But for today and understanding your herbal type and knowing how to choose herbs in your everyday life, that is not necessary to know.
Okay. Wow, there's a lot of great questions coming in here. So let's see. What if you only click 1 or 2 boxes on both sides?
So that is an advantage. Anytime that, like, if somebody has all hot and all cold, that makes it super easy for that person to be like, bam, I got it. When you don't have that immediately, I think there is a big advantage there in that right now, one of the most important things you can do is increase your curiosity and awareness of these concepts. And so you can think about these questions that are on the quiz and think about how you feel throughout the day and bring more awareness to it, because that is going to ultimately be the most revealing about your herbal type, is to think about it and really reflect on it and see how things change for you throughout the days, etc. So I would say really think about just how you feel in any given moment. Pay attention to that. You might write some notes down, etc. And really get just a feel for your own unique qualities.
I like this comment that really appreciates the simplified quiz. Went to 2 years of alternative medical school and always seemed to confuse me. And I agree. Like before, it was always so confusing. And now just having just a simple way, because that's what Rosalee's saying. Like you can go really deep with it, but yet what I find here is it's like there's a level that everyone can learn that it's applicable to them. So yes, you can go deeper and do more, and it will reveal so much more. Or you can start here with some basics that are going to definitely help your ability to choose herbs.
definitely.
Yeah.
And I think of like all the cliche of like the onion and like going the deeper layers of the onion, but it's so true. You know, you get the basic concepts and it's really as you work with it. And then of course today it's all about you and your herbal type. Tomorrow we're going to throw herbs into the mix. And so then it's this whole other experience. So we really are just kind of going basic, and then we're going closer and closer and getting in a closer and closer view of what this all means when we put it together.
I like this question. What does it mean when one sleeps with socks? It means you live in Western Washington. You know? But yeah, I don't know if there's a serious answer to that. I just want to address this and receive handouts and whatnot. So at any point, just to remind everybody before we get to the next question, because thanks for asking this, is that you can always go over to learningherbs.live at any time, and you put that in the URL. Right there in a new web browser, and it's right there. There's a download for the PDF of the handout. And you could just open a new tab right now as you're listening to us, type in learningherbs.live, click on that download button that's in the middle of the page there. It'll open up, and then you can just scroll and then partake. So thanks for reminding me to address that again, because that's important. So let's see. And also, if you missed the first part, will there be a replay? Yes, just to remind anyone who's joining us a little later, you can just go right back to where you're watching this right now after it's all finished and simply watch a replay. But again, learningherbs.live, you can go there. That's your hub. Get the download, you can get the links, the replays, get text reminders, anything you want right there. All right, so let's see, socks means cold. All right, I'm really dry and also cold. Sorry, I'm reading things and laughing. That's probably not very. Okay, can you calm your hot or cold, damp or dry if you have checked off most of the boxes in one or the other?
Yes, that's herbalism, is helping to find that balance. So that's what we're really going to be looking at a lot tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And someone asked, what if you're watching on your phone? That's why I suggested in the beginning, I suggest you watching on your computer, because then it's really easy to get these things up. But that's okay, because you can continue watching now and later on go to learningherbs.live on your phone or your computer and then get it and print it out from, or however you want to do it. But yeah, so that's why I suggest it's great to do the watch on the computer to get the full effect. But if you're on a phone, you can definitely do that too. But you might need it a little later. Go to learningherbs.live and get it up on a different browser window. Okay, so let's see. Do you work with planetary influences for individuals influencing these 4 qualities: hot, dry, Mars quality, etc.? So
I do not.
Some people might be wondering.
Yeah, I do not do that. I know that exists, but that is not something that I really work with.
Okay. All right, getting that comment off there. All right, so I think that where are we right now in the
I was just reading through some of these great.
Yeah.
I mean, there's
you want to address
many
anything
great.
that you're seeing?
Well, I saw one and I was like, that's so good, and then it went too fast. So I did see a couple people wondering about if they can watch the replay. Did you already answer that, John? That there is going to be a replay.
Yeah,
Okay.
Absolutely, and it's easy to access. You'll get an email. You've registered after, or you can go to the hub, learningherbs.live. Everything you need is in learningherbs.live. I mean, easy for everybody. All right. How do we know if it's a trait that is just us or one that we should correct herbally? Good question.
That is a good question. To me, it comes down to comfort. It's never that, if somebody tends to be warmer, we're not saying like, you should be neutral and we're going to do everything we can to force you into neutral. Sometimes that's just who we are, right? We tend to be warmer, we tend to be colder. But it comes down to a comfort thing. Are you feeling too hot? Are things becoming uncomfortable? Here's an example of that. I get a particular kind of headache that when I get it, my mouth feels hot, my head feels hot. So I have all these symptoms of heat with the headache. And I've learned by experiencing that heat that when I get that particular kind of headache, then I need things that are very cooling for me. And it's amazing how well, just by having cooling things, it doesn't even have to be herb related. Having things like ice or ice cream actually helps cool down my system, releases that heat, and then I feel less of a headache. And so that's a good example because herbs for headaches are notoriously difficult because, as you might imagine, there's so many different reasons for headaches. There can be the I didn't sleep very well last night headache. There could be the I hate my commute headache where I'm like driving and I'm super tense and really upset. There could be the I need my glasses prescription changed headache. There could be the hot headache. There could be the cold headache. So many different reasons. You could not have you drink caffeine every day and you missed a day and you got a caffeine withdrawal headache. So many reasons for a headache. In Western medicine, you have a headache, you often take, Tylenol or ibuprofen. Herbs don't really work that way. So that's a great way of thinking about that is if you're able to look at your headache, understand the underlying cause, look at it energetically, you're going to be able to choose an herb that matches that much better than simply if you looked at a big list of herbs for headaches.
Okay.
And ultimately, that's what we're talking about today is how do we move to sense-based herbalism? That is, you knowing who you are and how herbs make you feel, than just simply relying on a list or relying on what anyone says, like, you should take that. Because I think that often happens. Someone will be like, oh, I take willow for my headache. You should take willow. When you take willow, it doesn't work for you. That's because you and that other person are different, right? You're unique.
Yeah. Just a quick question that somebody asked here was, can we share that LearningHerbs.live with other people? And what I made for everyone, if they want to share with friends, enjoy the replays, is that you can simply go over to herbalwheel.com. You can share that with them. And that will go to the page where you registered, herbalwheel.com. Simple as that. They can get the wheel and they can get all the replays. They can get whatever they want. So that's a great place to go to copy, paste, or type in or share anywhere you want. So I made that for folks to make that easier for y'all. But appreciate that. All right. Let's see. Okay. So this is, I see here on the quiz, for those asking about neutral, and, where the same checks are in both area, it could mean that you're balanced, which is great. The goal of herbalism. Yeah. Okay.
And it's
you.
also, again, if you think about those graphs I showed, you could be really hot and really dry. Just naturally, that can be where you fall, or you could be closer to neutral. Again, you are unique, so wherever you fall on that is relevant. There's no one way to be. But that's why I'm trying to show you, it's you get this broad idea of I tend to be cold and I tend to be dry. But just because another person is also cold and dry doesn't make you the same, right? If you're taking away anything today, it's you are unique. And just really lean into that idea. Absolutely.
It's a huge distinction between treating systems and discovering root causes and addressing them. Good. All right, you are so welcome, Katie. I appreciate that. And let's see, tension headaches all the time, Jamie says, and I've read the skull cap is good for that and used to nicely. Would you agree?
It really depends on the person. I don't really think of this herb for that thing. And how I came to that really is when I first studied herbalism at just kind of a generalist herbal school where they did teach, if you have a headache, take this herb. If you have eczema, take this herb. So that's how I was taught. And I loved it. I loved herbs. I loved learning this stuff. I loved that there were natural solutions to things so that people didn't have to rely on over-the-counter medicines. I loved it. And so then I went into clinical practice, and very quickly I began to see, as I started working with lots of people, that some people reacted well to those herbs and some people didn't. And I was not very comfortable with that. I wanted to feel very confident, I'm going to suggest some herbs, those people are going to take it, and then they're going to feel better. I understand that, back then I understood it doesn't happen 100% of the time. That never happens. But I was not getting the results I wanted to. And that's when I was introduced to the sense-based herbalism, energetics, etc. And so that's what we're exploring these next 3 days, is how do we get away from take this herb for that problem, or here's a whole list of herbs you should take for that problem, which is totally overwhelming, and instead figure out who you are and how we match herbs to the person.
Well, Abigail here is ready to move on.
Cool. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay.
I was also noticing in the chat how many people mentioned, there's sinus headaches and dehydration headaches, and is like, yes, there's so many headaches. You can see the problem with a list of herbs for headaches, right? It's just never going to work out well because there's so many reasons for headaches. Okay, so we're going to review a bit, which I think will be perfect because some of the things people were asking are in this review. So number one, as I said, if you're taking away anything today, it's you are unique. You got to pay attention to who you are. And it's because you're unique that you're going to get the best results when you choose an herb for you and not solely for a disease. You have a unique blend of the 4 qualities of hot, cold, and damp and dry, which helps you to determine your herbal type. And this will guide you in determining the best herbs for you, which is what we're going to be talking about tomorrow. As a reminder, I think people jumped on this concept right away. You get it. Nothing is static in nature and nothing is static in you or constant, right? Things change with the seasons, the time of day, what you eat, the era of your life. So instead of rigidity, right, we're not looking for rigidity. We're not looking to memorize lists. We're learning to pay attention to ourselves. And again, through that, you're going to be able to choose the best herb for you when you're paying attention to who you are. Okay, so day 1 is about what's your herbal type. And you've learned how herbs work best when they're chosen for you and not a disease, right? Who are you? What type of headache are you getting? Rather than that whole long list. So that's what we learned. Day 2 is avoiding common mistakes with herbs. We're going to go beyond memorization to really see, or I should say feel, how herbs make us feel. And tomorrow's going to be lots of fun because we're going to be doing hands-on activities. And it's also going to be fun because we're going to be moving beyond memorization, because I know we've all been there. You know, you're dutifully trying to memorize all this information, maybe a little of something, maybe a lot of something, but generally that just works for the short term. Then when we try to think of it later, it's gone, right? We're like, well, I studied what herb is good for eczema and I knew all these herbs, but now it's just gone. So the cure to memorization blues really lies within your senses, which is exactly what we're going to be exploring tomorrow. And it is going to be hands-on. We're going to be tasting 2 simple teas together. So you want to check out your handout to get the recipes for those teas. They're super simple, one for ginger, one for peppermint. There's a couple of ways you can make it, but they're super simple. So see what you can to make those for tomorrow. If you can't make them, no worries, still show up. But if you can, definitely make the effort because it's going to be really fun to have hundreds of folks drinking and discussing teas together. Okay, so we can go back to live video. And your homework for tonight, going into tomorrow, is to pay attention to how you feel and recognizing that uniqueness. And as I said, maybe checking in with your friend, checking in with your neighbor, your family, asking them about these questions too. Because the more you can kind of embody it and get a sense that, oh, that person always feels cold when I feel warm. All of that is just good as a way of reprogramming how we think about healing modalities.
All right. So what do you think? Is it time for some questions and sharing?
Yeah, let's hear people's questions.
We have some time. So,
Yeah.
All right. So there was a question up here that, and some people might be wondering about if peppermint essential oil can be used tomorrow.
Good question. I would not use peppermint essential oil. Definitely use the tea.
Yeah.
So you want to get dried peppermint leaves, or sometimes at grocery stores in the fresh herb section, there's fresh peppermint. Either fresh or dried will work, but you want to use the whole herb. You could even find peppermint tea bags. That works great too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Great. And should we make the teas ahead of time or make them during class?
I think John and I are going to make them ahead of time, just so that they'll be right here with us. There's going to be like a little bit of time where you can make them, but if you want to just like be focused and be ready, then you can make them ahead of time. You can put them like each in a little thermos, or they don't have to be like, in fact, it's better if they're not piping hot when you get ready to taste them. So if you make them right before, I think that'll work out great.
Yeah. Let's see. Lots of questions here coming in. Will you cover whether dried or fresh have different effects?
Well, that is definitely something that is something to experience. So tomorrow, I'm recommending that people either have dried or fresh because I want to make it simple for you. If you happen to have dry and fresh and you want to make them both tomorrow, let's do that and taste how they make you feel.
All right, so this question here was about information available textually. So I think YouTube will make like closed captions afterwards or automatically, but not, I didn't have plans to make an actual transcript, but we do have a really cool thing we're going to talk about tomorrow that may answer some of that question for you too. And let's see, there's a good question, is how do you treat the person's regular body type, example, hot, damp, or the person presenting body type with illness, example, cold, damp?
That's a good question. So when I teach about that, I talk about like your herbal type is who you are. That's your constitution, which is like a mainstay. And then there are your current energetics, which is what happens with an illness. And that's going to be something that we're going to talk about later on. But the idea behind that is really, you always, like, I never want people to overthink, right? So if you're like going into this like whirlpool of philosophical thinking of, you know, well, maybe this or maybe that, I always want to just draw it back to the simplicity, and you treat what you see, you treat what you feel kind of thing. So if you're working with an acute situation, then you're just kind of thinking about that acute situation mostly, rather than like trying to create some, you know, crazy flow chart of like, well, I'm this degree of hot and cold normally, but now I have this degree of cold and damp, and I'm going to try and like create a formula that beautifully matches those. Like, no, there's really not a lot of point in that. You just treat what you see, go with the acute situation.
I'm not really a tea person. How is this going to work? I think there might be a way.
Well, you don't have to be a tea person to try some tea tomorrow and just to have that experience. Tea is great because water is a universal solvent and it extracts a lot of wonderful things from the plant. So for our purposes tomorrow, it's a good way to go. If you really wanted to, you could try, you know, a tincture of ginger and a tincture of peppermint, which is an alcohol extract. You could also get fresh ginger and fresh peppermint and just take bites of them. But you don't really have to be like a tea person to try a bit of tea. I'm definitely not advocating that like now you have to drink 3 cups of tea every day for the rest of your life. Although you could.
Sue asked in a couple of questions about they only have spearmint. Will that work instead of peppermint?
Yes, spearmint will work. Good
Okay,
question.
cool.
Thanks.
Yeah, this is a good question. And you know, fresh too. A lot of people, even in the fall, have fresh peppermint, spearmint growing in the yard. It's always great. And try both. If you have to dry a peppermint tea bag, make that tea. Try it with fresh. You know, it's like herbalism is about experimenting.
Yep.
Right? So
Yep.
that's a thing to remember. So I have 2 sets of quizzes, different sets, so they might not have understood the reason for the 2 quizzes.
Right. I don't know that I really explained that very well, so thanks, Abigail,
Yeah.
for asking that.
Yeah, that's
So
what I was wondering.
your first set is your herbal type and your kind of overall herbal energetics. The second quiz is for your current energetics. We didn't go over that today. You could look at that and think about that, you know, just look at it. And basically that's like if you had an acute illness or something comes up for you and you feel a little bit differently, you can look at those and think about those tonight and tomorrow as well.
Yes, absolutely. And these are also, if I'm, you know, like quizzes to keep and use over time, right? Because that may change, especially your situation, just something to have in your binder. Like something I like to do is, you know, maybe make a binder or something. And when you see PDFs like this or other recipes that you have off LearningHerbs or other sites, is you can, you know, print them out and hole punch them and organize them in different ways. And you can flip to them when you know, so if you see some peppermint recipe at some point, you could print it out and put it under peppermint section. So when you want to study that more, you can do that. It's a great way to kind of do your own self-study online. Let's see. Have you seen some questions? I see this one. Well, this is kind of addressed before, but it might be good to reiterate. Can you change a body type? If I'm cold and dry now, can I balance my body through herbs?
That is definitely one idea behind herbs, is that recognizing like, oh, I'm feeling overly cold, I'm feeling overly dry, and then being able to work with herbs to help pull in, you know, to feeling more balance and more comfort. Absolutely.
And I'm going to put up here again that 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 when we start talking about these things, there's always folks who are like, hey, where are the handouts? Again, LearningHerbs.live. And you just go right there and you can download that and look at that. And you can also go to LearningHerbs.live on that handout where these quizzes are, and the herbal flavor wheel, which we're going to talk about on Saturday, is also the recipes for the tasting experience for peppermint and ginger that we're going to talk about tomorrow. So it's all in one handy handout. You don't have a printer, just pop it up on your computer screen and go along with us as we're going along, because that happens too these days. All right, so great. I'm wondering here, Rosalee, what you seeing?
Well, I think we maybe answered this, but I just want to say whatever mint you want to use is great. So whatever you have access to.
Yeah, even someone asked lemon balm, which is a mint.
Yeah, you can use lemon balm, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. All right, so.
Yeah, there's so many. I think we've gotten to a lot of these questions. I love the questions. I love the conversations. Thanks, everyone, for contributing there. And I just want to really reiterate that we're really thinking at this stage, we're thinking big picture, right? We're trying to get the idea of these concepts, because I'll just speak for me. And when I was growing up, I didn't think like, oh, am I feeling hot or cold? And then how would I choose medication based on that, right? It was just like, I have this problem, I'm going to take that pill. And my point today is that in herbalism, you're only going to get so far with that method. Yes, sometimes that works. It's not that that never works. Sometimes you think, I have this problem, you look it up, there's an herb listed, you try it and it works. Yay. Like, I'm not opposed to it working. But what I know is that the more problems you have, or the more you're working with herbs, eventually you're going to see that there's this limit on how often that will work. And I really want to see people successful with herbs. I don't want people wondering, like, okay, I tried an herb and it worked. I tried some other herbs, it didn't work. When are herbs going to be effective for me? Like, is this going to work for me or not? Right? I want people to feel like, yes, this is going to work for me. I know that this is going to help me, because the more success you get with herbalism, the more you want to learn about it, and then deeper down the rabbit hole you go.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I had a question there, and it went away. Let's see here. Treating a symptom versus treating a cause. Would we use the same quiz for kiddos?
Absolutely. And I think the more you can apply this quiz to people around you, the better. Because again, it helps you just get into that the mindset and framework, and seeing how this is for lots of folks. And it's good to try it on multiple kiddos too, and just see the differences there.
How do you identify the cause of a symptom in order to address it properly?
Good question, but a big question, right? Because I don't really know how to answer that philosophically for like everything out there. That is basically a big training in order to learn how to do that, because every kind of health imbalance out there is going to have different underlying causes for each individual. So not sure how to answer that in this context right now. But for today, what we're really thinking about is getting into the senses of like, how do I feel? And recognizing how you feel is one of the best indicators for choosing herbs for your health.
Again, like someone's like, what if you can't stand the taste of mint? Well, just an exercise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it is an exercise. It's not really necessarily about liking or disliking it tomorrow. It's about getting in touch with your senses and how things make you feel. There's a particular reason why I chose these two plants that I can't give away now, but we're gonna see that tomorrow. Right. Okay.
So one question that someone asked earlier was with worm. I think of the one was why aren't worm and moist on the flavor wheel? So it's probably an opportunity to talk about the flavor wheel for a second there. I think they are somewhere.
Yeah, I was looking. I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah, it's in the what is it, this third ring? Or I can't quite, I don't have my glasses on.
And sometimes like I'll interchange moist and damp. Those are, those are.
Well, that's a
definitely-
good point. Maybe that was.
Yeah, that might be it. So
some
damp and
folks-
moist are the same.
Wondering about, see, many herbal books are written by type of illness and what herbs, why herbs work that way. Can you talk a bit about that?
Just looking at that. Well, yeah, so I think a lot, let me see how to back that up. So a lot of us, definitely me, grew up within a world of Western medicine, which obviously has its many bells and whistles and wonderful things about it. If I'm in a car wreck, I'm definitely headed to the ER to get emergency medicine. Western medicine has amazing features in that way. But what happens to many of us is that we become disillusioned with Western medicine because it sometimes their medication has harmful side effects. And I think for most of our everyday needs, we can rely on herbs to help us feel better. And so what happens is that we've grown up in Western medicine. There's a certain paradigm to Western medicine, which is typically that, the disease is diagnosed. Then you have this particular disease, like in the earlier slides, I was saying you have eczema, and then the medication is prescribed for eczema. So in Western medicine, that's how it's done. In herbalism, that's basically never been done until now when people are saying, I have blank disease, I use this particular drug in Western medicine, now I want to use an herb instead. And so it's kind of this like overlaying of using herbs instead of drugs. And what I'm saying is that sometimes that works. Sometimes you can find the herbal equivalent of an over-the-counter medicine and it'll just, work basically the same. Sometimes it works. A lot of the times it doesn't, though. And that's because herbs are being applied in a way that's just never been done, right? Herbs 200 years ago, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, people were very successfully using herbs for their health, but they didn't do it with this overlay of Western medicine. They weren't using Western medicine as a diagnosis and then trying to figure out what herb fits into that diagnosis. So a lot of the books today that get published like that, it's kind of just like a very modern approach to it of saying like, okay, we have this Western medicine paradigm, this, system or body of thinking of disease. And now instead of using Tylenol, instead of using Neosporin or whatever, we're going to choose an herb instead, so the herbal equivalent. And again, sometimes it works, a lot of times it doesn't. So we really need to switch our thinking. If we're going to use plants, if we're going to use herbs for our health, let's use them more effectively by tuning in to how they've been used for thousands of years, and that is by choosing them for the individual, not for the disease.
That's great, Rosalee. Thank you. Angela asks, say someone is cool and dry, would you want to use herbs that are warm and damp?
Yes, nice, Angela. We're going to talk about that tomorrow.
Okay. Here's somebody who's medically unable to ingest mint. I don't know if there's another option for them to taste. Another pungent herb, maybe?
Yeah, let me just think about that for a moment. I mean,
just hold it in your mouth
I guess
and
I
spit
don't
it
know,
out.
like what mint? Does that mean like spearmint's out? Does that mean that
Yeah, that's true.
Lemon balm is out? Like, is it all plants in the mint family? Or can something like because lemon balm would be a great one to use instead. Another like radical choice is you could have a cucumber. Use a cucumber. Just bring slices of cucumber with you. That could be another way to go.
Yeah, there you go. Wow. Okay. Is it just for medicinal purposes that we're covering?
No, I think that's another thing that herbalism really shines in, is that it's not just when we're sick or ill or uncomfortable, but this method really shines in helping you to choose herbs for your everyday life. And it can really help you see, through the kind of herbal fads of like, this herb's amazing, everybody should take this herb. You'd be like, oh, actually, when you get into the nuances of it, no, not everyone should take that herb. So it really helps in just that like day-to-day maintenance of loving herbs and wanting to have herbs infused into your daily life.
This is a good question. Does pungent on the wheel correspond with umami?
No, umami is not on the flavor wheel. Umami is a taste that is recognized. It's a taste that's often related to food and not really medicine. Umami taste being, I believe, umami is a Japanese word. It's good to recognize that as a different taste, but isn't really applied in the world of herbal medicine.
All right, let's see here. That's right. So about the wheel, that Rosalee was talking about that on day 3.
Yes, day 3 is all about the wheel.
Absolutely. How long does it take to become an herbalist? Somebody asked. That was I thought was a great question.
That's another good, simple but complex question, because in some ways I think if you are working with herbs every day and herbs are a part of your life, you're an herbalist, right? There's no qualification or some stage that you have to be in order to be called an herbalist. And I think that it's important that all of the kitchen medicine and simply using herbs in your everyday life, that is an herbalist. And then of course there's different ways that we work with plants, and there's different ways that we're called to be herbalists. Some people want to be herbalists and they're choosing their teas every day, they're using lots of herbs and spices in their food, and they have some knowledge about how those have medicinal qualities and how those qualities within those plants are affecting them. Some people might be called to work with them, specifically choosing herbs to help with their family. Maybe it's more of a community thing that people tends to be when you start learning about plants. People will start coming to you, what plant is good for this? You'll start to get that question a lot. In terms of being a clinical herbalist, there's no particular licensure for that, but generally the recommendation there is at least 2, oftentimes 4 years of intensive schooling. And the American Herbalist Guild, they actually have a list of certain hours, 8,000 hours in pathophysiology and 400 hours of materia medica, and I'm just making up those numbers, but they have a list of how many hours you should study different aspects, medicine making, botany, etc. So it does become more formalized as you get further into it. What this training is about is, I think, in some ways the most crucial, because we're talking about how to work with plants for 80% of your herbal needs, right? For that everyday thing, for those simple things that, when I hear people going to Walgreens, I'm like, I haven't been to Walgreens in a couple decades, because I don't need Pepto-Bismol, right? Because I know what herbs I can use instead of Pepto-Bismol. I don't need, I don't need Tylenol and ibuprofen, because I know what herbs I can rely on instead. So for those everyday, minor, but very significant health issues that people turn to over-the-counter medicines for or suffer through, herbs can be so amazing for that. And it really, when it comes to that, it's about, again, knowing who you are, sense-based herbalism, and then learning how to bridge those two together and find herbs that really work for you that you can rely on.
This was a question. Totally check out their sites. Thank you very much for the little plug. So we are learningherbs.com, and learningherbs.com is where you can find out all about us and things that we offer. Learningherbs.live is just a little page I set up for everyone watching here this week, this weekend. So then when, so you don't forget where to go when it's time to start. If it's 1 o'clock tomorrow, you get that text reminder. It's like, bam, just go learningherbs.live, get that link if you don't have it on you. So that's why I set that up. Great stuff. And so Chris missed the answer to the question. If you're hot and dry, then the herbs you would use are?
We're going to explore that tomorrow.
Ooh, we're going to explore it tomorrow. Good. This is good. This is good, because we don't want to.
Yeah.
Right.
But I will say, it's what we're doing is if you tend to be warm, then you're looking for plants that are cooling. That's, it's the most basic, simple level.
Okay, great. Let's see. Can we go back, speaking of which, are we done for the day on this topic, or can you talk a little bit more about hot, cold, damp, dry? Maybe they joined in later. Yeah, that's what I have for hot, cold, damp, and dry are these big concepts, and really, but it's where the rubber meets the road.
or where the roots germinate and grow is in your own embodiment and feeling of it. And so that, and again, it's that like onion, it's going deeper and deeper. And some people might be like, okay, I'm still in the onion skin phase where I'm trying to understand, how to think about things and hot and cold and damp and dry. That's a great stage to be in. And it really is just thinking about that, being in touch with how you feel, understanding that senses are important. Someone might be like, okay, I got that. I'm past the onion skin stage and I'm like a little bit later in. There's always more to go. And really the way to do that is to take it in, to think about it, to embody it, because this isn't really about facts. It's about how you feel. And the only way to keep going deeper is to keep going into how you're feeling and to noticing. So again, today is all about you, right? Us as humans, how we feel, thinking about things. How do you feel day to day? How do you feel in different climates, time of days, different eras of your life? There's a lot to think about there. Then tomorrow we're throwing plants into the mix. And so we get to think about plants and their energetics and what that means, then how we match that to humans. So we're all going deeper and deeper into the onion together, even though we might be like a little bit different stages.
All right. So what do you think, Rosalee? This has been
I
going
think this
for
was a lot of fun.
It's a lot of fun. Been
A lot of great questions. Thank you so much.
20 minutes. There were some questions I know about the wheel and whatnot, and we'll be covering that on the third day and whatnot. It is a different, some may be noticing, oh, this is a different flavor wheel we have for you this year. It is, because we have a different reason and intention for this year's flavor wheel as opposed to last year, and we're going to talk about that tomorrow. So I appreciate you bringing all that up. And Rosalee, you seeing anything else on there that you would like to address, or like, hey, this is your show, so I just want to see what you're feeling.
Yeah, these are great comments, and here I'm just looking at all of them, and it's definitely lots of great stuff here. Again, I just invite you to keep thinking about these, and I do see a lot of questions that's like, that's going to be tomorrow, or that's going to be Saturday. So I love that your mind is already there and going forward. And again, just, thinking about it, feeling about it, noticing these things, and we're going to explore more tomorrow.
Absolutely. And tomorrow, again, we're going to be talking about avoiding common mistakes with herbs, right?
Right. So we're going to talk, there's so much to cover tomorrow. We're talking common mistakes, 4 big ones that you don't want to fall victim to. So we're going to look at those. We're going to do a tea tasting together, and we're going to talk about plant energetics. So lots to cover tomorrow as well.
Some folks always wonder like how long. We just go as long as we need. Today is look like a little hour and 20 minutes. It might go a little longer tomorrow. It might go around that, or maybe up to a couple hours. But if you have to go or whatever, you can always go back and pick up where it left up on the little replays that we have, and that's where you can go to learningherbs.live, and I'll put that up again just to remember to remind yourself, learningherbs.live, but also. If you want to share this with people, say, hey, you might like this, just share herbalwheel.com. That's an easy one. Go get the flavor wheel, and can join in tomorrow, even watch the replay. And the replay will be posted right here, exactly where you watch, and when we're finished, just refresh your screen, and it should work. It might take a second or two, I don't know, but that's why we do it that way, just so we could keep it simple for everybody. All right, so Rosalee, thank you so much for sharing all that you have shared today.
Absolute pleasure. And I'm really looking forward to tomorrow already.
Yay. So we'll see everyone then. Thank you so much for joining us. And we'll see you next time, tomorrow, 1 o'clock Pacific time, for Getting Results with Herbs Day 2. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.